Welcome to another edition of the Mailtime Podcast. I am joined today by Alon Pincus, former Consul General of Israel to New York. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Daniel. Good to be with you.
I reached out after I saw your comments on Trump's remarks regarding Israel's behavior, whether that's freeing Marwan Barghouti
Right.
or its behavior in the whole setup with the Kiryat Gat. Just for the audience, can you elaborate a little bit on your take on Trump's position?
Well, Trump waited 7 months patiently, must be added. He was part of the January 2025 ceasefire as a president in the waiting before he was inaugurated during the transition period. He took credit for the agreement, rightly so to a degree. And then several times asked Israel to end the war because this is what he pledged to do, and Israel did not. A few months went by. Israel refused, for its own reasons, good or bad, remains to be seen. Refused to placate him, and so he basically disengaged. Then came June 2025, 5 months ago, 6 months ago almost. And Israel is engaged in a war with Iran and is asking for U.S. assistance because Israel lacks the munition to hit some of Iran's nuclear sites. Trump hesitates, but then says yes. In exchange, he's asking for the war in Gaza to end. And apparently, I wasn't in the room or I wasn't privy to that phone conversation. Mr. Netanyahu says yes, but then reneges on that promise. And Trump is angry, and that builds up. And here we are in September of 2025, and Israel attacks Qatar, trying to kill three Hamas political leaders in Doha, the capital of Qatar. Trump becomes livid, and immediately thereafter, by the way, it's not clear whether he knew about it, did not know about it, when he knew about it.
They claim that they don't know about it.
They claim that they
Witkoff
don't
and
know.
Jared
On the one hand,
Jared
they
Kushner,
claim
right.
that they don't know. On the other hand, it is almost unfathomable and inconceivable that Israel would do something like this without at least a technical warning to CENTCOM. And the technical warning is not the 5 or 10 minutes that were cited in some reports. A technical warning is much more than that. Let's not forget that CENTCOM has satellites and radars and a huge Air Force base right outside of Doha. And so it sort of doesn't make sense. But, one day we'll know the truth about that. But for the purposes of our conversation, Trump becomes more engaged and then decides that he's had enough, and forces an agreement on a very reluctant and very recalcitrant Netanyahu, brings him summons him in a way to the White House and makes him endorse the agreement publicly because he claims, reportedly leaks, that he did not believe Netanyahu's word in a closed room. Okay. Be that as it may, Netanyahu endorses the agreement.
And he forced him to apologize to Qatar.
Exactly. And a plot inside the story, a subplot inside the story, he forces him publicly, actually, to apologize to Qatar. He's holding a phone on his lap, a White House landline phone. And on the other side is the prime minister of Qatar. And he says to Netanyahu, it's time to apologize. And Netanyahu says, okay, I will, even though a day before on Fox News, Netanyahu said that he doesn't need to apologize. And so when Trump says you need to apologize, Netanyahu, out of politeness and grace, says, okay, I will. And Trump said, picks up the phone, hands him the handset, and says, I have him on the line, and this is all televised. This is all photographed. And so that was sort of a humiliation. Okay, fast forward to where we are today. So Trump presents this plan, the one that Netanyahu endorsed in the White House that day, and the plan is almost intractable. It is ambiguous. It has phases that depend on the
I think intentionally so. Right.
perhaps these kind of agreements, if they specify dates and maps and lines and red lines and then define thresholds and benchmarks, they're bound to fail. So they left it sort of amorphous. What Trump wanted most was the ceasefire and the hostage release, and that was secured. But then he came to the conclusion that perhaps Mr. Netanyahu was looking for a way out by violating the ceasefire, either on through an Israeli initiative or in retaliation to some Hamas infringement or infraction, which Hamas, as expected, did 10 days or 5 days later. And in response, Israel bombed some targets inside Gaza. And then Trump said, "Okay, I can't have this, impinge on my credibility and my image, and I've talked a big game on how I brought peace, and if the Israelis, my allies, are going to violate this, I need to make sure that this doesn't happen." So that led to two things: to the deployment, even though it was pre-planned, but the deployment of a small American monitoring base in the town of Kiryat Gat in the south of Israel, halfway between Tel Aviv and the city of Beersheba. They are not in no way, shape, or form going into Gaza. They are not armed. It's a monitoring facility, has about 200 soldiers, but
Some argue that it's babysitting.
well, I'll get to that. Uh, um, I'm not sure it's babysitting, and but we'll get to that. The point is, Daniel, that unlike previous American deployments in Israel, and there have been in the past American deployments in Israel, this was made public. With all the fanfare. Military correspondents were invited royally to walk into the base and talk to the U.S. Military personnel, see the equipment, be briefed by the commanding officer on what it is that the Americans are doing. And it was this whole, we are here because we don't trust you. That was the implication. On top of that, there's a procession. There was a procession of American officials here. First comes the president, then comes the vice president, then comes the Secretary of State. In between and throughout that period, the president's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and
And
in
just
fact,
before, right?
yeah, well, throughout the period, they came with Trump
Right.
and they stayed since. They left since,
No,
but
they. I mean, they were there. They were there about a week before Trump, right? They were
yeah,
there.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, making
Well,
sure. Yeah.
they were here for like 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not sure they left. I mean, I think they left a few days ago, but they really extended their stay
Right.
here. And that was construed in Israel as Israel is, oh my God, all this, and these are critics from both the left and the right, saying, okay, is Israel some kind of a banana republic? Israel is not trusted by the U.S. Israel is a vassal state, and that led to what you mentioned a moment ago, that it was American babysitting. But more than babysitting, it exudes and projects distrust in Israel's actions
Well,
and even
yeah.
Israeli reporting, because the day after that base in Kiryat Gat invited all these Israeli journalists, the New York Times came out with a story, which was, they were fed that story by the Pentagon, I imagine, by the White House, I don't know whom, doesn't matter, that there are American drones flying over Gaza without Israel's knowledge, which in and of itself is silly. I mean, it's impossible to fly over Gaza without Israel's knowledge. Maybe it was without Israel's prior consent. That's a different story. But that all led to this sense that Trump is seriously engaged, that he does not believe Netanyahu, and that the U.S. is adamant because Trump said so, but also because he made promises to Saudi Arabia, to the United Arab Emirates, to Qatar, and to Egypt, and even to Turkey, that he's here for the duration of the ceasefire. He's here to stay, to make sure that the ceasefire does not collapse. So all that led to this situation where in which we are in. But there's one more important thing here before I let you talk a little, and that is that this in no way affects the feasibility of the next phases, which I am still extraordinarily skeptical about. Hamas is not disarmed, and I don't see them disarming anytime soon. And anyone talking about, oh, yeah, well, the Gulf states, they're going to funnel in $75 billion worth of money to reconstruct Gaza. That money is not coming unless Hamas disarms. And unless Hamas disarms, there won't be that so-called international stabilization force, which is a euphemism for an Arab provisional force, which includes the Palestinian Authority, to which Israel objects for good or bad reasons. Everyone
And many Palestinians object
and many Palestinians object
because
to this
it's
force.
going to be seen as Shabak collaborators, which
Yes,
is
exactly,
what you
exactly.
have with the Palestinian Authority. So they're not
Exactly.
necessarily so happy about it.
So if you have a deal, and I'm talking diplomacy, I'm not talking business, but this applies to the business world as well. If you have a deal, an agreement that both sides are fundamentally unhappy with, it's not going to work. It's not going to endure. It's not going to move on and progress to the next phases. And that's why I'm skeptical.
Right. So I wanna hammer on the rhetoric
Yep.
specifically, which is from my position as a proud American. I'm sitting here saying after October 7th, I'm not sure that Israel would have existed in the way that it exists today in October 2025 if not for the United States. That's I'm coming from a conservative perspective. That's praising the stewardship of even President Biden to an extent, whom I disagree with extensively, but the immense military support and political support that the United States has given Israel.
That's right.
And you have an insane crowd within the conservative movement, the Tucker Carlsons of the world, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, who are making a lot of noise about how much money is being sent in aid. I'm not even
And
talking about
Steve Bannon.
and Steve Bannon. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about a rational actor, say the Marco Rubios of the world, who are saying, "Listen, we're giving you a lot of support, and it's kind of like if mommy and daddy give you a credit card, they are
Yeah.
allowed to look at the bill and see what's going on." I don't think that's unfair for President Trump to say, "Listen, I'm going to dictate a few things here and there," because ultimately he is in the driver's seat, and that's a bigger picture issue that I believe Israel has misplayed in the sense that if you are, I'm not saying you're a vassal state, but if you're giving up a lot of your autonomy and decision making, there are consequences for that, and that's been policy that goes back decades.
Well, despite your initial anxieties, I totally agree with you. I
And
think you're
I think
absolutely.
that's a strategic mistake for Israel. I don't like,
I think
yeah.
you're absolutely right. Now, there are two ways of looking at this. The first is when the war began on October 7th, because that's how you started, Daniel. Israel was under no existential threat. Israel then expanded the war into Hezbollah and then into Hezbollah in Lebanon and into Iran. That's where the U.S.'s military power and money, 21 billion
Wait a sec.
cumulative.
You don't think Iran or Hezbollah's
No,
ability to was not an
no,
existential threat
I
in that
think
thing?
that's part of the false narrative that Mr. Netanyahu was trying to disseminate to extricate himself and vindicate himself from his responsibility. But that's
Wait 1 second. I'm just gonna say for all the people that are watching and everything like this, and you're getting mad that I'm not jumping down your throat on this. Pound sand. I appreciate having a conversation. There's no
okay.
point, and no, because I hate when people say, "Oh, you said this one sentence and I didn't
Yeah.
respond." Okay, so just
But
put that to the
not
side for a second. Yeah.
but that was well, it's not narrow, but that was a focus on October 7th, whether or not the U.S. saved Israel. It did not save Israel. Okay, but now let's take it to from a
Wait a
broader
second.
level.
I do have to push back on that though for 1 second. I
Yep.
do think that if you did not have American support, right? What is from Yoav Gallant, and I cannot stand Yoav Gallant, but from his telling of October 7th, he calls Lloyd Austin and says, "Send them munitions back." He says, "I don't think that without the American backing, you keep Hezbollah out, you keep Syria or Iran at bay.
Yeah,
I don't think that happens without America."
that is right. The U.S. But let's for the sake of our listeners
Sure,
and
put it aside. Yeah.
viewers,
Mhm.
let's put it again in a little bit of context. On October 11th, 4 days after the Hamas savage terror attack, Israel was contemplating attacking both Hezbollah and Iran. Okay. The U.S. cautioned against that. That is why Joe Biden, at the time, the president Joe Biden, did two things. First, he came here on October 18th, but even before that, he dispatched to the region two aircraft carrier strike groups. Now, that's huge. That's a lot of firepower.
Yep.
The idea wasn't that the USS Lincoln and the USS Bush or the USS Ford, I don't know which of them was here.
Sure.
That wasn't the idea. Wasn't that they bombed Hezbollah or they bombed Iran, but that was a deterrent against Hezbollah and Iran. Stay
Right.
out, which they did.
By the
The
way,
U.S.
I just want to add one thing because I can never let the October 11th thing go by. I want to remember those brave soldiers, including Daniel Castiel and um, um, uh, his colleagues from Maglan,
Yes,
including Eli Moreno, who
that's
were
right.
ambushed in Israel on October 11th. So when Yoav
Correct.
Gallant gets these softball interviews and he gives this BS about, oh my God, we're focused on the north. That is BS, Yoav Gallant. You had soldiers, Israeli soldiers got killed in Israel, ambushed on October 11th, and they
That is right.
cannot rewrite the history of this. And
That
I'm
is
just saying, I get
absolute.
so upset because
That is
I think,
absolutely
yeah,
right. And I'll tell
yeah,
you more that you're upset. You're upset for good reason. So was I, and I still am.
yeah,
By the way, that parenthetically, that is what Lloyd Austin, that at the time the Secretary of Defense, told Gallant. He said, "Are you out of your mind? Deal with Gaza.
right,
Deal with what's on the table now. Don't start new theaters and don't start new fronts just to say, oh my God, we're encircled, we're under existential threat." But I'm going back
of course,
your main argument here about the conservative view of we're giving you a credit card. We're entitled not only to look at the bill but to ask you questions about the bill. Um, okay, in Trump's uh, to Trump's credit or in his defense, same. He did something that all his predecessors refrained from doing. Clinton didn't do it. Obama didn't do it. He himself did not do it in his first term, and Joe Biden certainly didn't do it. And that is give Israel a reality check. Say to Israel, basically, gentlemen, with all due respect, you've received from the U.S. in excess of $180 billion since the 1960s. Okay? We have satellites helping you. We shot down 90% of incoming Iranian missiles in October 2024. Okay. The first Israeli Iranian, there was April, but particularly in October, the second
right
Israeli
before Rosh
Iranian,
Hashanah, right,
yes, correct, a year ago. Um, I'm going to pressure you because you have to understand something. It's not just the $180 billion. There is an asymmetrical relationship here, and you, for some reason, think you're on equal footing here. We have not only funneled that money, we have not only given you access to state of the art weapons system and what's called quality military advantage, but uh, we have cast 57 vetoes at the UN Security Council against Israeli anti-Israeli resolutions. So when we tell you to do something because it is in our interest, please be forthcoming and do it. We're not dictating, we're not forcing you, we're not coercing you, but at the same time, we're not asking you to compromise on vital interests. We're just asking you to modify your behavior and adjust what you do to what we ask. Now, Biden did not have the guts to do that. Obama couldn't care less. Clinton tried and then gave up, and Trump did this. And so every time I hear someone whine about, oh, we're the 51st star and we're a vassal state and vassal state and all that nonsense about banana BS, as you called it before, there is a trade-off here. There's a cost-effective calculus here. Look at the last 40, 50 years. Um, did the relationship with the U.S. benefit Israel or not? There's no question. It's not even beneficial. It's a force multiplier. It's a basic tenet, a central pillar of Israel's national security. So in exchange, Israel gives up a certain level or certain degree of maneuvering room. So what? It's worth the cost. It's worth the price. And vital interests are not being threatened. So in that respect, I go back to how I began this segment of our conversation. In that respect, I agree with you 100%. And I don't care if you call it a conservative view or a liberal view. It's just right.
Right. If you have 5 more minutes, I'd love to just ask you.
Go.
I'll say this from my perspective as an American who loves Israel. I don't know why Israel would want that position simply because yes, there are benefits,
Well,
but as an independent country, I would imagine that you'd want to be able to strike certain terrorist infrastructure counter to what the defense doctrine was for the previous 2 decades, but
correct.
at post October 7th, saying, listen, I have an issue with Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Khan Yunis or in Jenin or wherever it might be, and not have to worry about this kind of big brother looking over me. That's just my position, but again, I know that it's a complicated, obviously a complicated story. I want to, before I let you go, I want to ask you. Now, this is I was looking through some of your writing and I saw what you wrote in February 2024 in the New Republic. And you actually said, and you kind of, you now have you have a very unique standing in Israel in that you're someone who's opposed to both Netanyahu and Trump in your
Yeah,
writing.
I'm not American, so I'm not opposed to Trump in that. Yeah, but in the writing,
I
yes.
mean, you referred to him as a liar, a user, an exploiter, a malignant narcissist, just like the U.S. political ally Trump.
In his political behavior, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, sure. No, no, of course not personal. But I'm saying why do you think that there's so many Israelis on the left,
Hmm.
presumably the left, right? Like the, the people from
Center left, yeah.
center left
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are so pro Trump, and then at the same time,
Okay.
obviously anti Bibi. But it's a kind of, I'm not saying oxymoron, but it's a little
No,
bit
it's not an oxymoron. It's weird. It's unacceptable, more
to
ethically, if
you.
you
Yeah,
ask
yeah,
me.
sure.
But there's an explanation for that. If Trump is against Netanyahu, then I'm for Trump. They say the only one who could force Netanyahu's hand, the only one who could end Netanyahu politically is Trump. Ergo, I support Trump. That's the logic. Now, these you're talking about people who see everything from an Israeli perspective. That is an extraordinarily and dangerously narrow point of view. You may like or dislike Trump, but in order to evaluate who and what he is, you need to look at his policies in Canada, in Brazil, vis-a-vis India, vis-a-vis China, in Europe, in Ukraine, not to mention his domestic policies. If you make up your mind that you like what he's doing or you support most of what he's doing, that's fair, that's legitimate. But if you are against what he is doing, but you support him only because he can screw Netanyahu, then this is morally repugnant. What your hatred toward Netanyahu is so toxic that you would support someone who any other day you dislike just because. Okay, that's one explanation. The second explanation is more how should I say has to do more with Israeli political culture and morals and culture in general or you know
Got it.
contracts.
But by the way, if I were to take your argument right here, that first argument, and
Mhm.
apply it to the issue of American Israel relationship, I'd be very cautious if I were Israel, because if
Yeah,
God forbid you'd have
yeah,
someone like an AOC who's a presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, and then you have someone to the a little bit more crazy than a Tucker Carlson or someone who's in bed with him. Let's remember that JD Vance's one of his press people is actually Tucker Carlson's son, Buckley. Uh, I don't know that if I'm Israel, I necessarily want that dependency. If you're looking at
that's
at the bigger issue,
Daniel. That is exactly. Although that's for a different conversation
yeah,
on another day.
yeah,
That's exactly my argument against Netanyahu. That he cornered Israel in his constant meddling in American politics to the point where Israel now has no levers of power to play around with because if you have AOC and Tucker Carlson as the two presidential candidates in 2032, okay, for the sake of our conversation, then we're screwed. We are screwed. We Israel. Okay. But I would just wanted to complete that last
Yes,
thought.
absolutely. Sorry.
For Israelis, more than what they think about what's going on in Gaza, and more than their profound dislike and abhorrence toward Netanyahu, there was the issue of the hostages. They were convinced that Netanyahu, they still are convinced that Netanyahu did not do enough, couldn't care less, basically sacrificed them. And if it wasn't for Trump, and if it wasn't for his envoy, Steve Witkoff, both of which were dedicated to this, the hostages would not come back. So the same people that would demonstrate against Netanyahu in the morning would cheer Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff in the evening, because they see it. It wasn't just a narrow vantage point focused on Israel. It was just that single issue, huge issue, yeah, but single issue of the hostages. So people are grateful to Donald Trump because they think he did something that Netanyahu just wouldn't do. So that sort of explains why people who hate Netanyahu adore Trump, at least now.
Right. There's so much to unpack, but I'll save that for the next time. I hope you do come back. I really appreciate you taking the time, and
Anytime, Daniel.
I
My
very much enjoyed
pleasure.
talking with you. Thank you so much.
Likewise.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.